And I think it's time now to just wipe the slate, and Roundtree to just give them that benefit of the doubt and let them blood them in games. Like Tom Ahern is going to be the new Paul O'Connell in my feelings, and there hasn't been anyone close to him really since those days. Like no trophy since 2011. It's just not good enough for Munster rugby. I'm sorry.
Joe presents House of Rugby, together with Bank of Ireland, proud supporter of the 4 Irish provinces.
Hello and welcome back to House of Rugby, together with Bank of Ireland. I'm joined by the lovely Lindsay Peat, of course, former Leinster and Ireland superstar rugby player. And also beside her is legend of the game as well in his own right, Leinster, former Leinster player, Benetton and Italy out half, Ian McKinley. You're both very welcome on the pod, guys.
Good to be here.
Yeah, great to have you
on
in.
Our second date, isn't that right?
Yeah. You know what? I'm punching. I'm absolutely punching.
Absolutely
but
not.
like, don't worry about third wheeling, okay?
Sorry, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm fine over here, away from me too on your second date.
How good do we look though? Look. There we go.
Colour coordinated with the green. I didn't get the memo.
Well, we didn't want you to get the memo. That's the whole point.
Well, Ian, we had you on last year and we have you on again this year, obviously, to talk about your book. But first of all, I just want to check in with Lindsay, make sure she's okay. How was your weekend? You were playing a match?
I had a great weekend. Yeah, we spent the weekend. Me and the boy went up to Galway Friday. Stayed with Ailsa Hughes, our scrum half, and then we went to Truro Pet Farm, and then we went on and I had a match against Galwegians.
How'd it go?
57-7.
57-7.
Yeah, Galwegians are a good side. They're a tough side. The body is feeling it now. Second day of recovery. So, yeah, good old match. We played well. But yeah, it was kind of a tough. It's always a tough place to go now. Thankfully, it didn't rain. It rained each side of the kick-off time, but it didn't rain that for the 2 hours that we played. So,
and you playing Galwegians?
Played in Wegians.
Yeah.
I was hoping kind of like my usual stint in front row and then maybe be promoted to the back row, but that didn't happen. But I played 80 minutes, so happy out.
Any
No
tries
tries.
this week?
But no, I would hope I have involvement in setting up a few. But listen, I actually run the length of the pitch for a prop. I did kind of the Jeremy Lockman. I was kind of like, hoping for some loose balls to get some, tries, but no. But look, a great team performance, good win, and congratulations.
Good
to the
stuff,
girls.
congrats. Well, by the sounds of it, we might get you out of retirement, so if you're playing every week in, week out.
Listen, I will keep that exclusive for this podcast, so you watch this space.
Ooh, there's pros coming up, we never know. You heard it here first. Another man that probably won't be coming out of retirement is Ian McKinley. How are you, sir?
I'm good, yeah. Don't think I'll be coming out of retirement. I'm sort of at peace with that decision. So, yeah, no, all good. So, delighted to be here.
You're still coaching away with Railway, right?
Rainy. Old
Rainy,
boys,
sorry.
up north. So, no, we play in the AAL 2B. So, it's, we were in Sligo a couple of weeks ago. Pretty much the same as you. It didn't rain for the couple of hours we were playing. So, you get the glamour fixtures, but it's good being in grassroots rugby and, enjoyable.
Yeah, you're enjoying it. Is that kind of the full-time gig now, coaching away with Rainy?
Well, part-time I do a couple of things apart from that, but just in terms of the rugby, that's what I would do at the moment, and would hope to get involved in a few more things going forward. But just sort of young family, it's it's a nice time just having that on the side to do. But no, you're learning lots. Like, I'm head coach, and it's sort of strange talking to lads who are maybe similar age to you or a year below you. They might not necessarily listen to you the whole time, but no, it's good, and lads hopefully enjoy it and get out each week for training and games and that sort of thing, so it's good.
Yeah, you're in 2B, is that what you said?
Yeah, 2B, yeah.
And how are you getting on? Are you doing okay in the
I
league?
think we've played 3 games. We lost 2 very narrowly, the first 2, so a bit of pressure. I think if it was in the football game, I'd be fired at this stage. So, but we won there last week against Sligo, and then we have a game this weekend. So fingers crossed all goes well.
Nice one. You're a busy
Can I
man.
ask a question now? You seem a very chill guy.
Okay.
Right.
It's a front.
Is it? Well, this was my question, because I've started to very minutely, try to, coach in the, scrum at Railway and the front row. But I find myself going over my head, could I have done things better? And last week we were playing and I went to 6, so I was coaching our tie head. But I send voice notes to players. Do you do that?
Yeah, we'll try not to overload them, because they're working the whole time.
Yeah.
But which guys sort of appreciate feedback. So you would send maybe a video or explaining a situation and what could you maybe do differently here and that sort of thing. So I wouldn't go overboard. I wouldn't
You're not like me, the overthinker, going okay now, and I'm sorry for how I spoke to you with that.
Well, it's funny, when I played the morning after, I would never sleep the night
of the game.
Of the game, and even then when you played the game, or if you did, you'd be up so early in the morning just because things are going through your mind. It's exactly the same when you coach, even if it's maybe not to the same level. just you're going through things like
yeah, it's a
constantly in your
different,
head.
isn't it? It's a different thought process, because now you're not only controlling your own game and how you kind of like, and I'm sure as a 10 and a centre, you're kind of always in that thing. You're central to the brains of the operation of the teams.
Yeah.
But even for front row, 'cause it's so specialised, and like it's so hard to teach, and like you can only teach it like really by learning really tough games. And we'll cover it later on in the pod with kind of Jeremy Loughlin moving from loose to tight. Like, yeah, I find such responsibility, not now only my own game, but now trying to feed these young players in a specialised position. Like, so, yeah, I was wondering, are you the same as me and you're kind of overloading them?
Especially when you lose, like you just you go through things in your mind. And I don't think that'll ever change. Yeah, that's just the way I'm sort of programmed. But yeah.
And as head coach, you just look after the backs because that's your position, or would you kind of feed with your forwards coach, or how do you run that one?
So I'm lucky this year. Last year was maybe a bit different. We didn't have as many coaches, but thankfully we have a really good coaching setup where we have sort of everyone distributed in their own areas. But then it's sort of a balancing act, because nowadays you can have coaches specialised in a micro area, which is probably too much information at club level. So no, we've got everyone across the board, and we've got three coaches that can do the backs, and we sort of rotate between us, and then I would deal with sort of the attack and the joys of picking the team and having those conversations with people. So you're the go-to person. Yeah.
And you enjoy the coaching. That's kind of like the long-term plan for you, is to go further on into coaching.
Yeah, I would love to. It's we all know it's a fairly tough industry. You sort of don't know where you are necessarily from year to year. So my family are probably prepared to know that there might be a bit of travelling in the future, but
of course,
yeah, like I mean, I love it. Apart from playing, it is the closest that you can get, and that sort of gives you the rush. But it's totally different. It really is. You're somewhat detached from the team, even though you're fully involved in sort of the running of it. And I suppose if you just go up the professional ranks, it's just amplified so much more. But no, I love it. Just like dealing with people and hopefully helping people progress in their career.
An element of coaching that I've always kind of been interested to ask people that have gone from playing professionally into coaching, and I know the likes of Felix Jones said it to me, and Jerry Flannery I know has said it, that the demand of coaching is nearly more intense than when they were playing, because obviously when you're playing you just concentrate on yourself, but now that you're coaching you have to have concern for an entire squad and dropping players, picking players you mentioned there. Do you find like you're doing more analysis and more work now than when you actually played?
Yeah, my level is not at where those lads are. Felix and Jerry have obviously gone on to do unbelievable things already. So it's what I'm doing is on a smaller scale, but
start somewhere. Yeah.
It is very much like intense, like in the sense of you have to deal. I remember Rog, I think, said a while ago as well. You almost have to deal with the guys that aren't playing in a better manner than the ones that are starting, because they're the important people that sort of keep the whole team going and still doing the trainings and all that. So it's almost actually putting energy into the guys that aren't starting all the time, and trying to give them reassurances that you'll try to keep it realistic, but also reassure to be have that reassurance at the same time. But I'd imagine at professional level you have to watch so much rugby.
Of course.
Just the video analysis. If players are questioning why aren't you playing, you need to know the exact stats. You need to know the exact reasons, and they have to be valid reasons. Even for reports on referees and all that sort of stuff, you need to know exactly what's going on. So 100% it would be 10 times more intense.
Yeah,
but at least you can quantify that at a professional level, like, so the lads can, at least you can quantify to a player, like, and we've all been there where you got to go, oh, okay, like for me, we didn't make as much rucks, like your handling errors, your penalties at scrum time, so at least there's some bit of backing. But like, I can only imagine for you with the level you're coaching now, and obviously you have aspirations, I'm sure, to go forward, but like to try and motivate a club team, and then like lads who are in and out for you, and you're trying to progress them on in the technical side of the game, like that's hard, like, 'cause you're kind of juggling a lot of facets of the human nature, like even like I find the emotion, like what motivated me for a game, I now have young people who need to be talking to a lot more softly, and you have to be really gentle with them, and then you're trying to remember that it's a club game and they're here for different reasons than you are, like, so there's just so many dynamics to the I would think to the level you're coaching right now. Yeah,
well, I think it's finding out what those reasons are. Some people would have different reasons. I mean, we all have our reasons for playing, and particularly at club rugby, some people would have different reasons. I have a huge amount of respect not only to my team and the players that come and train, but to all club teams. trying to, get out and whatever 2-3 nights a week, whatever it may be, and then you've got your AIL, traveling all around Ireland, leaving on a Friday evening, going down to Cork. I'm based up in Northern Ireland, so even to get to Galway is 4.5 hours. It's not it's not easy. We're taking the back roads all the way. It's not just straight M50.
You're not getting a little flight over.
No, so firstly you have to have the utmost of respect for people that are going out and doing it and giving their best, and it's just trying to realise everyone is there for maybe a different reason, but trying to align it that you've got a common sort of interest and goal for doing it. So that's been sort of the biggest challenge, is going from professional back into club. Yes. Even though I've played club rugby when I was here in Ireland, you do remember it and all that sort of stuff, but they are two completely different worlds, and just trying to align some of the things you learned from professional rugby and with the club stuff has been the biggest challenge.
Yeah. Well, I definitely jump on that as well. I've the utmost respect for anyone that's involved in club rugby in Ireland. Obviously, I only know the Irish system. I presume it's the same worldwide in Italy where you are. But it's such a commitment. It's every Tuesday, Thursday, and one game on the weekend minimum, and you're not getting paid to do it. And lads are going to want a gym, or women are going to want a gym as well. And then the coaches have all the analysis to do, and they're all doing it for free. I'm just like, it's such an incredible shift. And then, as you said, if you're living up the north, and if you're not in 1A, where most of the games are in Dublin, you might have to drive to Sligo or Cork or something. And I just think it's amazing. Like, I haven't gone back into club rugby because I was like, I don't have the time to do it. So, and seeing you going back, do you find it like such a commitment?
It is, but I have to say, and I have to commend Ray, like, they feed us now on a Tuesday, Thursday. Now, the amount of pressure that takes off me alone, like if you're going, say, like with a young family, like I could go straight from work to train, and I try and gym before my training, so you're kind of gymming, doing your pitch session, and then I can have like grub. And then, to be fair to Noel and Susan, shout out to them who feed us, if I bring a lunchbox, I try and bring my lunch for the next day, so you kind of, you're trying to always stay a step ahead, but to be fed, and even like you just have to shower and go to bed. Like, so we talk about recovery, and yet like for some club players, like you're going home, and I remember even playing international, you're going home, you're trying to pack a bag the next day, you're trying to get your lunch, you're trying to balance your nutrition, you're trying to get your recovery and your sleep, you're trying to like help raise a family and be part of a household. So like, shout out to everyone. Like, it's tough, like it is tough, and some clubs are running a little better, and some clubs then, if you don't have the volunteers or the finances, it just makes life more difficult. Exactly. So big shout out to all the clubs. We do see you, we're right behind you, and if I can take opportunity to say hello to those players in Scariff, a little club in Clare, one of the girls' boyfriends plays, and he asked for a shout out on the pod, so we're going to give a shout out to a little club team in Scariff.
No, 100%, and that's why I think down the line, that is why the Irish teams are doing so well, because our underbody systems are so good, and we have people like Ian McKinley coming back and coaching in 2B, like, and helping these people come up the ranks. So shout out to everyone, because I just think it's amazing, because I've been in it and out of it, and I'm just like, it's such a commitment. So well done to everyone, keep it up. But we could talk about that all day. What I do really want to get onto is Ian McKinley's new book. It's called Second Sight, Rugby and Redemption. And well, I'm just going to read the foreword, which is by the very special Johnny Sexton. So I'm going to read that first, and then we'll talk about the book. So this is just on the inside of the cover, and Johnny says, "What Ian achieved was truly groundbreaking. He paved the way for every other player who needs goggles to play rugby. He won a battle with himself to play the game, but also a battle for all those who might one day dream of following him. From start to finish, you couldn't have made up his story." So from Johnny Sexton to write that, it obviously means a lot to you, I'd say, does it?
Yeah, a huge amount. I mean, you can't get a more important figure in Irish rugby over the past 20 years. I think there's the talk now of the battle between him and O'Driscoll, who's, probably the greatest modern day player. So I've been fortunate enough to have played with him, trained with him, played against him, and to have him, Jerry Thornley as well, who's obviously a very accomplished writer and with the Irish Times to help with the book is amazing. So really enjoyed the process, and I really hope people, whoever does pick up a copy, that they enjoy it. Yeah, well, these lads, like likes of Jerry Thornley, writing it, like, he's only done a handful of books. I don't think he even wants to write anymore. Like, so it just shows how amazing your story is and how your career has developed over time. And I could read the back of what Jerry's wrote, but it's probably better to come from you of what exactly, like, would someone get out of reading the book yet? I haven't got a chance to tuck into it yet, but yeah, there's plenty of time. Christmas time there.
Christmas time's coming up. On the 25th, but like, what a unique story this is going to be. Like, there's no book out there like it.
Yeah, I suppose for my friends are sick and tired of hearing the story, but I'll reach out to the people that maybe don't know my story. So
definitely, yeah.
Ultimately, I'm now a retired visually impaired rugby player. Now, I wasn't born with a visual impairment, but I grew up in Ireland and played in for Leinster and UCD was my university team, and just playing a club game and a teammate stood on my face and burst my eyeball, and complications developed, which led to ultimately losing sight in my left eye due to detached retina. So retired, moved over to Italy where I coached, but there was always sort of the burning desire. Lindsay's talking about going back and playing potentially, we'll keep that we'll keep that quiet. Me retiring at 21, just it was way too soon, and you just want to you want to achieve things in life and rugby, and that's sort of what you're defined by. So decided to investigate whether there was rugby eye protection around, and just hounded the correct people, hounded the IRB as they were known at the time, now World Rugby, and eventually rugby goggles became available. And because I lived in Italy and hadn't played for the Irish national team, I did underage up to under 20 level.
You're being very modest. I'm just going to jump in there very quickly. On the back of the book, it says that the young fly half is one of Ireland's hottest rugby prospects before obviously this accident happening. So you're on the route to be Johnny Sexton. So
well, I mean, you never know what's going to happen. Like you never know what life is going to throw at you. The path was going in the right direction. You played my first game for Leinster when I was 19, so a few months out of school. You're fortunate enough to captain a game with the Irish under-20s while Peter O'Mahony was out injured and things like that. So you're within a group of players that are, a good group of players. So
you're on the right path.
Yeah, but again, you just don't know what could have happened. But yeah, that happened to me, and thankfully picked up the goggles and became eligible for Italy and played international rugby for about 3 years. And now I'm 32. I retired for the second time, age 31. Most people only have to do it once, but I decided to do it twice. But retiring first at 21, I wasn't at peace with it, was angry. Now that I'm 31, I'm at peace. Was able to experience the game at sort of the highest level, and got to experience things that I didn't have previously, so I'm very much at peace. So doing actually this process was very therapeutic.
That's amazing, man, that you're like so content, and you finally itched that itch that you knew you could get to the top level, and you did it with only 50% of your eyesight.
Yes, well, yeah, 0% eyesight in my left, and then the goggles would have made it a bit more tricky, just because there was certain padding which was 10 degrees less, and certain weather conditions were not favourable. So
if you had to put like a figure on it for someone listening now, how difficult was it actually to see?
Well, like if you were playing in rainy conditions, it would be like driving the car without the windscreen wipers, so you'd constantly have to wipe away. So that's why you just call the forwards around the corner or do a box kick off 9, so you didn't have to do that much. But
the thing is, like, it's not like you're no offense, it's not like you're playing at front row. You're just gonna like put power through someone. You don't really need to be able to see. You're playing at 10. You need to look at the whole pitch, like.
Yeah, that's why you rely on good communication from your mates and that sort of thing. Or my mum would always joke whenever she would watch me play, it looked like I had a fly flying around my goggles, because I was just
your head moving
constantly, because you had to look, if you had blind spots or you couldn't necessarily see something. So, but you adapt, you do adapt. So I think what I would hope people would get from the story is that yes, there is a rugby element to it, but there's a bigger theme to it in terms of sort of resilience and not giving up, and family helping me. If it wasn't for my family, really wouldn't know where I'd be. And the biggest thing out of all of it for all visually impaired people, they can use these goggles. So the latest figure I had was around 2,500 worldwide are using the goggles. So hopefully for people that need it, they continue, and that's sort of been the biggest success out of the whole thing. So I hope for those reasons people pick it up and enjoy it. Yeah.
I think me and Lindsay are both well in the rugby world, but what you've done is bigger than rugby. I feel like it doesn't just apply to rugby, which is a contact sport. There's all these sports all over the world that can now look at rugby being like, oh, you can play with goggles. And I know even in my own family, my younger cousin, I think I told you last year that same again, he has a really bad eye problem, and both retinas, I don't know the exact medical term, but he's basically blind, and he had to wear goggles as well. He was told he had to retire, then saw the likes of you wearing goggles, and he like went down the path toward them. Then he plays currently now. So it's just like incredible for people like that you probably wouldn't see the trickle down effect that you have for young fellas. Yeah,
well, it's been amazing the messages that you do get, and you actually realise how many people have a visual impairment or know someone with a visual impairment, and have gotten involved in projects that are probably, if this didn't happen, you probably wouldn't have got involved with. So that's been the other side of it. And rugby's all about, buzzword inclusion, and there wasn't something that was being catered for visually impaired people. So this is just something that can be added if you need it, and experience the game, because obviously rugby can get a bad rep with the concussion at the higher level. And we talk about professional sport or the professional side of it, which is a very small percentage, really. I mean, I'm glad we've spoken a little bit about the club stuff, because that's the grassroots element. The majority of people that play, they play for enjoyment and, to be included in the community and all this. And if you do have a visual impairment now, you have something that you can use to help you play the sport.
I love it. Actually, I get goosebumps thinking about it, because it's just like no excuses. Like from you, you're just like, I want to play, I'm going to make it happen.
Oh, well, I was fairly stubborn, like, when you're young, you're finding out who you are, and I just, like, honestly, I do remember as a kid, like, that is just what I wanted to do. It was just play rugby. That's all. I'm probably not a good advocate for people having, many options in life, and rugby's probably not the best thing, because, when you're, in your 30s, mid-30s, obviously Lindsay's a freak in terms of still going.
Listen, but, I'll take it.
It's just what I wanted to do, and I wanted to experience it. And if you don't want to leave any stone unturned, then you'd always regret if you didn't push things to the max, which is what we had to do. And constant training with the goggles, constant understanding of different floodlights and how different advertising on the side might affect the goggles and all this sort of stuff. So every place that you went to was different.
And you place kicked as well, looking up into
probably
the
not very well.
Yeah, you did internationally. And I'd say looking up at the post and there's lights in your way, like shining off your goggles and stuff, like things that we wouldn't even think about. Like rugby is hard enough as it is, and then you're doing it with all that, man. Like it's just, and you're very modest about it. I just think it's incredible.
I appreciate it.
And like obviously this is technically going to be seen by some people as a rugby book, but I think it's more than a rugby book. Like if someone could pick this up and give it to their child that might have, like, I know, for instance, Joe.ie, she plays for England. She's deaf. Like it's not just because you're blind in one eye. Like people might have some impairments. Like they might only have, I don't know, one limb or something like that. And you're just like, all right, suck it up. That's the card you've been dealt. Now let's go. Let's get it done. And people like you and Joe.ie, which is just incredible. Like so, I think people don't look at it as just a rugby book. Look at it as in like a get your shit together, and you can do it if you really want to do it. Would you say it's more so that?
I think it's a mixture of it. There's enough for people that follow rugby. There's enough rugby stories in it. I hope that or big names, that people will go, okay, yeah, I know those people. But yeah, there's the other side of it. I think the best example I can give. So there's also a film or a documentary film that's on the Netflix and Amazon Prime. But whenever we were opening that in Italy on the open night, there was sort of a Q&A at the end of it, and. Yeah. One woman stood up in Italian. Obviously, we were in a city called Trento, right in the mountains of Italy, up in the north. And she just said, I know nothing about rugby. This isn't a question, but I know nothing about rugby. Yeah. I just came here because I heard it was an interesting story, and I'm so delighted I was here because I don't need to follow the sport, but the message is a lot bigger than that. So that's, I hope that resonates as well with the book.
Yeah. Is that why you wrote the book? Was that your prime reason to get across your story? I have so many questions, by the way. I'm so excited, so bear with me now.
What was the main reason? The main reason, I suppose, is getting your story out there. And I suppose mental health is obviously a couple of trigger words that people talk about now, which hasn't been maybe in the last 10 years been out there. So I went through my difficulties, which I do share in the book, and I think it's just important to get that story out there, that there are people that can do it. We all have our stories in life, this.
Can I just interject there, because just before, people don't know, because I obviously read parts of it, and people don't probably realise that Mr. Power was your consultant. And what I loved about him is you seem to get he was heavily invested in you. So after the horrific injury, you did actually get 70% of your sight back, and you were back playing, and you were in with Joe Schmidt, and he was so hard on you, and you were about to sign your first professional contract with Leinster. So you were back to where you wanted to be after being told. I pictured myself and you saying, like, one day at a time, one day, Mr. Power's telling you, like, one day at a time, but you had to exercise. Like, you'd come from obviously being a rugby player, GAA player, like you're an athlete in your own right. So to have the level and come back from the operation you had and the horrific injury, and then for your retina to come detached. And I know he obviously alluded to the fact that you would develop a cataract. Like, I'm sure that was the hardest part, because you felt, I'm sure, that you were back to where you needed to be after the injury, but then had to nearly start again and be then told your site couldn't be saved. Like,
Yeah, it has been. You don't want to be too wishy-washy about it, but it has been a roller coaster.
Yeah,
like the last
absolutely.
decade, honestly, it's actually been nice just taking a step back and not sort of have to worry about things. But definitely a roller coaster, because as you said, to get vision back, to then be playing like normally, to then lose the vision, to then get back with the goggles, and then not being able to play in certain countries as well. So you had that battle as well. Was hugely frustrating, because it always seemed that everything on the pitch was, even though it's not easy, was the easier part.
Yes.
Just everything else of, the battles off the pitch, the battles with vision and all that sort of stuff. They were the really difficult thing. It was almost like a battle with yourself.
Absolutely.
So if you could win that battle with yourself, then everything else, you need. I wouldn't say fell into place, but that was the biggest thing. Yeah.
Like, I just think it's fascinating. And my next question is, right, because obviously second sight, considering you lost your sight in one eye, like second sight obviously alluded to the fact that you can nearly see into the future. Did you have input into the title, or like, it's fascinating?
Yeah, it would have been more the publishers that came up with that. I had a few other ideas, but they thought it was good, and I'm happy with it. Like everything, I wouldn't publish anything if I wasn't happy with it.
Oh, it's a great
course,
title.
So I'm happy with it, and Rugby and Redemption, they came up with that as well. So yeah, I mean, as I said, it's just been therapeutic, if I'm to be honest. And it's amazing the things that you actually knew and didn't know. Like, I didn't know whenever I went in for the 4th operation with to try and fix my retina. I didn't know my parents were told that night that the vision was gone. They had to go home with all that information. And, here's me going, oh, everything is okay. And they knew in their hearts that, the vision is gone. So it's been interesting trying to piece all that back together, which some things you knew, some things you absolutely did not know.
And did you go through, obviously you were going through that again with your parents, reliving those memories?
Oh, I've been working on this for a year, like of just getting all the information together and making sure it's factually correct, because there's nothing worse than not having your facts in order. So I'm pretty sure everything is up to par.
I think it's brilliant. I think you're an inspiration. I think Johnny alluded to that in his deeper like introduction to the book, and that you're like an inspiration. And I think we do brandish the values of rugby, and I think you live them through this book. And the second sight, I think it's a fantastic title, because you went and used your impairment to inspire a broader cohort of people who may not be playing rugby now. And your 2,500 that you now have using your goggles, like, is just inspirational. And the fact that you had to do so many tests on yourself and to get this due and fight against everyone who didn't want to involve you or have you back playing, I just think hats off to you, and big love and big success with this book, because I think, well, you're certainly one of my favourite guests. You're so humble and you're so open with your story. And I think recently you were, was it down with something with World Games? Was I right with that?
The mixed ability down in Cork. So that's when I was talking, like, you've gotten involved in things that you just wouldn't have done before. You wouldn't have done before. And I've Sundays Rebels down there in Cork. They visited an Italian team in Turin about 4 or 5 years ago, and we went over and visited them and stayed the weekend with them, and like some of the best group of people you're ever going to meet. And like, that's the other side of it. Like, you love competing. Like, when you play, you love competing. There's no bigger thrill than when you win a game, you're with your teammates and all that sort of stuff. But the other side of that, there's no bigger thrill than other people taking part and being able to experience it themselves. And that's what I get a buzz out of now. And I look forward to hopefully in the future going back to the professional game. But at the minute, I'm very happy going back, grassroots stuff, and just getting the other side of rugby for the time being.
Well, you've heard it here. Get the book. Christmas coming up. And I'm certainly looking forward to finishing off.
It's cheaper than the other ones out there, so that might be, if people are struggling for cash, that might be.
You're giving it away. Like, I can't believe the price point. So I just think this is going to be such an incredible book. I'm looking forward to reading it, because it's something a bit different. You see every Christmas, I'm not going to name certain names, but rugby books come out and they're just the same stories from a different angle. Where this is going to be like something completely like motivating, but also cool stories from you coming up through Italy then as well. You went over as a coach and you managed to just play club rugby, then you ended up playing for Italy in the Six Nations and stuff. Like, how that even came about. Like you said, you did it last year on the podcast, but I think people need to get this book and read it, and especially give it to someone if they think they're struggling. I know if this came out, I would have given it to my cousin a couple of years ago, but he managed to pull himself through and get the goggles himself.
There's some nice funny bits as well. Brian O'Driscoll came to visit you. He brought a punnet of grapes. Let me be clear on that. There's no pun on this. And Ian's mum obviously was a bit starstruck with Mr. O'Driscoll coming to visit, and wouldn't let anyone eat the grapes and kept them in the fridge. And
I still think we have them.
Do you? Oh God, you probably froze them. Yeah, have them in a frame. Yeah, so there's some nice. And even as said, your relationship with Miss Perra and Patricia, the secretary from the and it's lovely. I suppose like we've all. And it's a very different injury. Like I broke my leg. I found that fascinating because you're able to rehab or do upper body for me, or you would have had the same. So I just think it's hats off, and it's a real testament to your mental resolve. And I genuinely just wish you every success with it.
Yeah, your indefatigability is so impressive. But to kind of sum it up, because we could talk about this book all day, I want people to go and get it now. Because we'll end up telling all the stories and people won't get it. But go get it. And Jerry Thornley, who's one of the best writers to come out of Ireland, said, Second Sight Rugby and Redemption, which is the name of the book, is more than just an outstanding sporting story. It is a tale that celebrates the power of the human spirit to overcome the greatest of setbacks. So definitely go get that, guys. Great Christmas present. But we'll move on and we'll talk about some rugby, shall we?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's start with your boys, will we?
Let's go with my fellas, yeah. And so Leinster v Munster obviously was on the weekend, and Leinster, as we thought would happen, won 27-13, but Munster did better than I thought. They held in for about 60 minutes, didn't they?
Yeah, I think the first try was Scott Penny's on just before the 30th minute mark. Nice tweet by Mike Ross about baby oil and how slippery the conditions were. It wasn't really nice. So I think it suited you boys, to be fair. Yeah,
Mike Ross tweeted saying, is it raining baby oil at the Viva? Which is very cheap coming from Mike Ross now. He would be the most skillful player, so.
Oh God, listen, have you seen the size of Mike Ross?
Oh yeah, I know.
Mike, he didn't mean that, hon. He didn't mean that.
Great player, but like, don't be calling out people's skills, like.
Oh, stop. It was a messy old match, wasn't it? A lot of turnovers, a lot of missed penalties. Like, it was, I suppose we knew it was going to be a dogfight, but I don't think the conditions made it for good watching at times. I think the standout moment was Rob Russell's try on the wing, when we kind of put some phases together and kind of started to get some soft shoulders and some gaps. But other than that, it was kind of a war of attrition. Knox was yellow carded, Clive was yellow carded. Do you know what I mean? Like, so messy old match now.
What do you make of it, Ian?
Predictable.
You watched it, I presume.
Yeah, I was at it, so pretty much it was very stop-start, and there was a bit of rain at half time, so I think second half conditions were tricky. If I'm to be honest, I thought Leinster were comfortable throughout. Munster's try was really good. They put in some good plays. The young players, they have a couple of really good young players, like Ahern. You can just tell he's going to be.
I love him.
Yeah, he's going to be really.
He's going to be a 100 capper for Munster.
He's going to be such a good player. But you just always felt that Leinster were just in control. They were able to just sort of dictate the crucial moments, and when Munster, they just didn't look as threatening. Leinster can just score like that. But no, I mean, it was Roundtree. I saw, said it was an encouraging. Yeah, there were encouraging signs, and hopefully a couple of the injuries that Munster picked up weren't too serious.
Yeah, in fairness to Munster now, they've 16 players currently out injured. Some of the list would include Simon Zebo, Conway, Earls, Tygburn, O'Mahony, Fekitoa, Stephen Archer, Wycherley, Kendelin, Salanoa and Snyman. So that is some list of players, and you could see it with the team for Munster was very young. Like there was, and some lads are on the bench who have one cap, and Rory came onto the bench and he'd only one cap as well.
He'd only one cap against
Gloucester earlier in the year. So like, in fairness, Munster had a really young team, and they did hold on for about 60 minutes. But as you said there, Ian, Leinster were never under any pressure. Like, I was at the game as well, and the whole game was just in the Munster 22 for like the first half. Leinster failed to score now because Munster's scramble D was pretty good, and Leinster made uncharacteristic errors. But Leinster were never under pressure.
We never panicked though, did we? We never looked panicked.
No,
like that's the difference. I think the mental resolve.
Yeah.
But I think like Gavin Coombs skip pass, I'm sorry, to his cousin, like, was unreal. We kind of said this last week. My thing is like Munster will always punch, like they'll always stay in the fight, but like I think two things for me: the young guys need to stay in. Like Tom Ahern, like I seen his reaction to winning a scrum penalty, and he gets up and he's just a beast of a man, like, and he's like, roar. And like you can see those really positive signs, but I think they need consistency, and the injuries might be a blessing in disguise, to be honest. They'll have chances now with O'Mahony going into the Irish camp, and obviously Conway's come back for his knee injury, but like they do need something different. Not only the fight. We said that, like, Leinster are able to mix it up. Do you know what I mean? And they brought in Scott Penny, Max Deegan, who again are kind of no more than some of the lads that you've mentioned there from Munster, but they're just being given opportunity, so they're able to develop at that rate and knots quicker than your Munster lads. And I think it's time now to just wipe the slate and Roundtree to just give them that benefit of the doubt and let them blood them in games. Like Tom Ahern is going to be the new Paul O'Connell in my feelings, and there hasn't been anyone close to him really since those days. Like no trophy since 2011. It's just not good enough for Munster rugby. I'm sorry. I know I'll give you a hard time. I'm sorry. I still love you, but
I think it's a bit more positive than that, in the sense that these young fellas are playing well. As you alluded to there, Gavin Coombs, like his skill set for a number 8 like was incredible. To throw that ball over the top to his cousin Liam Coombs. I don't think people realise they're first cousins. They live out in Skibbereen, or they're from Skibbereen, so that was a nice moment for the Coombses. But those young lads up and coming are doing well. I think it just, you could see it when it got to 60 minutes and Leinster unloaded their bench. They brought on the likes of Andrew Porter, who was supposed to go to the Lions tour, Jack Conan, who started every Lions test at number 8, Ross Maloney, who has over 100 caps for Leinster. Like, these guys are seasoned veterans, and we have guys coming off with 1 cap. So it just shows that we did, like, there's too many injuries in Munster, but the young guys did well. What do you think, Ian?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the bench, because when you saw the team sheets, like, you know, and usually you can judge the strength of a team by how good their bench is. You know, the top teams, their bench is just as good as a starting team. So when you saw that, you maybe had a bit more fear for Munster. But one thing you're never going to lack from a Munster team is spirit and effort, and you know, those sort of the basics of rugby that keep you in games and win games and all that sort of stuff. So their scrum was a lot better, I think, than most people thought. I think Leinster would be disappointed they didn't necessarily dominate from that. But I really like Munster's coaching ticket. Like, having Mike Prendergast, I think, is a really good addition. Having Dennis Leamy, all these things take time. And I know coaching, you're not going to necessarily have time. But I think, Lindsay, like, you're right. Like, those young guys need time now just to embed what the new philosophies may be within Munster, or you can't necessarily find your way because you don't necessarily have time to do that. But I think that's what they need to be given, because there definitely are good enough players. It's just I think the atmosphere was so dead in the game just because it never felt like a full-on contest.
Derby.
I don't know if that, you know, there wasn't that bite, you know, in previous years. You know, I remember going to Munster games in, you know, the Heineken Cup when Munster absolutely smashed Leinster in the old Lansdowne Road, you know, and it was a fierce rivalry because, you know, even though Munster thumped them, but there was a bit more bite in the crowd just because people knew there was the potential for either team to win.
Yeah, it's
but
funny
it just had that the flat feeling.
I actually mentioned that 2 or 3 times. I went to the game as well, and on the way to the game, it was so easy. I just like drove up, parked the car, walked in, and I was like, when I was a young fella going to Munster v Leinster, first of all, you're lucky if you got a ticket. Yeah. Second of all, as you're approaching the game, like 2 hours out, there's red jerseys, blue jerseys, pubs are flooded, like everyone's screaming, chanting, like headbands, the whole lot. Now you just walk down to the Aviva Stadium, stroll in, there's like spare seats everywhere. I don't understand what the problem is. Is tickets too expensive? People don't care about rugby as much anymore? What do you think the issue is there? I don't know what it is, because the rugby is a really high standard. Just people, how is the game not completely sold out, Leinster v Munster? Like,
I think it's just because the rivalry hasn't been as much of a rivalry in the last few years, potentially. So people might see it as an easier, as a game that Leinster are probably going to win, whereas previously it, you know, it was a bit more 55-45 situation where it's a lot more now.
Like, this derby holds the record for the highest attendance at a club game. Like, so we filled out Croke Park for 82,500 and now we're barely filling the Aviva at 30 odd.
There's spare seats everywhere.
100%. So I think, and this is, let me be clear, I am positive with Munster. I think my point is, like, the positive thing now is you've so many good young players coming up. Give them that time. I think when I say wipe the slate clean, like, you haven't won a trophy since 2011. Not good enough for the calibre of Munster rugby, but I think there's championships there within those young guys, but they need time there now. And that's what I think, especially what Ian said, to build on that. I just think they're, what was it, 30 points to 7, Munster beat us in that semi-final in Lansdowne. And like, I remember O'Gara like nearly massaging, you know, his ego and just the fact that they won. And like, it was Paul O'Connell, it was Jerry Flannery, it was Dennis Leamy, like, it was all the old guard that beat. And again, like, let's be clear, like, Munster set the tone for beating the famous team, to beat the first Irish team to beat the All Blacks. They win in European Cups when they beat 2 French teams. Like, no Irish international team, you know, when we get a win against France, it's a huge deal. So to beat Toulouse and Biarritz on their way to those 2006 and 2008 championships, like, they're big deals. But yeah, I just think because they've been so trophyless, it's just nearly like, and we said it in the show last week, it was just kind of, it was a given that Leinster were going to win. Do you know what I mean? And I just think that derby, it's always got, like, I hate losing to Munster, and I always go, there's no motivation needing to play Munster for any Leinster and vice versa. But I think the derby and the rivalry will always be there, but I think on the scoreline and on a rugby level, it needs to be invigorated to get the fans back.
I genuinely thought going to the game that I was like, this is going to be like at least 40 points on the Leinster side, and if Munster could get 1 or 2 tries, it'd be good. Munster did get 1 or 2 tries, but they actually held Leinster for longer than I thought they would. And if Leinster hadn't got that Rob Russell try at the end, Munster would have got a losing bonus point with a team of young fellas, academy players on the bench. So I actually think, I know I'm being very optimistic here, but I think it's a really good performance out of Munster. They're probably sitting now doing their team analysis, being like, lads, we didn't do too bad. If we did this there, we got to try here, stop Rob Russell, because Gary Ringrose did unbelievable for that try. He came around late, sucked in Shane Daly, and they just went down doing a 2v1. So I do think it's not too bad. And imagine you get all these 16 injured players back. Like, so I do think it's okay in Munster's sense that they'll be sitting there in their team analysis being like, lads, we're not too bad. I know everyone's kind of writing us off, but we're
their
not too
scrum
bad.
was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you have everyone fit for Munster, everyone fit for Leinster, I mean, you're going to have a titanic battle.
Yeah.
But professional sport now, the likelihood is that you're always going to have an injury list, and that's the thing about having the depth of squad, which I think Munster have just lacked in the last few years in comparison to a Leinster. And that's whenever you have that type of bench, that's just the difference that you would have in a game like that.
Yeah, and a question I want to ask you, Ian, in relation to coaching of professional 15s teams. For Munster, in the last couple of years, they've had like Rob Penny, they had Axel, obviously, who unfortunately passed away. Then they had Razzie. Now they have. Then they had Van Gran. Now they have Roundtree. I just named 5 coaches that I was under for them, like myself, and surely that has a big effect on like the ethos of a team and like everyone being on the same hymn sheet and different things. Would that have a big effect, like in a long term, for Munster, that they just don't know where they all are?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, they're good coaches. I mean, who you've named are very, very good coaches. I think just rugby is sort of moving on a bit from just, bash, and you have to have variation in your game, which I think is why, Leinster have been so successful, say, at the domestic end of things. Obviously in Europe, whenever they come up against the French teams, that's probably why they brought in Jenkins, just to bring a bit of beef into the pack so that they can maybe maul over teams a bit more. So certainly I think it depends on what your personnel is as well, and I think, I'll talk about Joey a little bit, just because I played 10 as well, and just sort of him against the Bulls last week, he was almost, I won't say back to his best, but he looked exciting, and he looked like he was excited to play. And I think it's just trying to establish, are they going to go, what way are Munster trying to play, whoever's going to be in that pivotal position, so I think that's just really important in terms of them just finding out. And I do believe Mike Prendergast has gathered a vast amount of experience and is a really good person to bring this team forward and how they want to play. I don't think we haven't seen the best of them yet, but I do think they're trying to do some different things, and maybe that's why they're forcing passes a little bit. They're forcing the skill set. So
you think the change of the coaches wouldn't actually have that much effect on the overall squad? That the players should be good enough to just adopt the game plan and go for it?
Those things do take time. It's certainly a balancing act. But it's tough as well. Roundtree, it's his first job.
First head coach job,
his first head coach job. But I think he's got good people there to assist him. Like Leamy and Prendergast will know Munster rugby in and out. So I don't think you're going to get a combo to assist him better than that. And I think it's just making sure that they have the right people in the areas in terms of what type of game they want to play. Crowley's a very good player as well. He played at 15. What did Leinster do? Just kick the ball up to him, because he hasn't played 15 that much. That's playing to
the weakness of identify a weakness.
So it's just about Munster trying to identify, I believe, what their strengths are and how they're going to go about that. Obviously, the names that you've mentioned, you have a different back row when you've got Peter O'Mahony and Ty Byrne in there. I mean, who any team in World Rugby would love to have them. So obviously that's massive, but that's just where Leinster have the jump on them. Is that you swap a Van der Fleer with a Scott Penny, you a Caelan Doris with a Jack Conan. I mean, that's
world class players. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, actually, talking more about the game that happened. So we had some lovely tries. We mentioned the Coombs one.
Yep.
We mentioned the Rob Russell one. Luke McGrath made up for his little mistake, and he had an unbelievable try. He burst through Ben Healy and Dave Kilcoyne.
Yeah, which Killer will
Killer would be fuming.
Oh, he'd be absolutely raging with that now.
Luke McGrath was like 3 meters out from the line, and he just powered through. I didn't know he was that strong.
No, because I can't lie. I was like, you're gonna die now. You know, you're like, that's the, you know, coming off a maul, you've such a strong line of D, and you're coming in against all front rowers in a mismatch you don't want to really be in. I was like, he's a ball chin, off you go.
Yeah.
So fair play, he finished well. But to build on Ian's point, I think like that was nice to see. I think the Munster did upset Leinster set piece, and that's something I wanted to see, because we saw that really with Ron Nagaro with La Rochelle. Like, he tactically picked apart Leinster in like the semi-final last year and the final this year. And I think that's with the coaching point. If you can bring in the coaches who will pick apart the opposition, which you can do at professional level and elite level sport, it'd be nice to see. But like, the scrums were very good from Munster, got a couple of penalties off Leinster, and I thought they dominated them. And set piece, they challenged on a line out a couple of times, which Connacht had kind of put us on the back foot as well the week previous. So I think there's good signs there.
Yeah,
I think it's just an evolution.
Roundtree's just knowledge coming in and dealing with the set piece.
Yeah, because Jeremy Loughlin, I think he's doing really well. Obviously, we saw a try last week from him, but set piece, like,
you had some analysis about him moving into tight head, or?
Yes, so he started at loose, and then Knox got yellow carded, obviously for a breakdown issue with James Ryan. So that was dangerous. So he went off. So fair play for Lockman, because I'm a loose head, and to go over tight, it's so like your scrum relies on the dominance of your tight head. So if your tight head, like, they're central to how successful your scrum will be. So for him to go from loose, you're doing totally the opposite of what you're trying to do in the tight, and then such responsibility. So,
okay, so you're going to have to, sorry, you have to realise you're talking to a winger now in a 7. Okay. So you're going to have to...
And a 10.
And a 10.
Yes,
so
it's
no
my time to shine as a prop.
So can you quickly just give a synopsis of the differences between what Jeremy had to do moving in?
Yes, so at loose, say on the hit, right? So you're kind of relying on your bind, you're kind of relying on getting underneath the tie head. You don't want them in this angle between your shoulder and the hooker, because that centre, if I'm sheared off, like, they'll go right through your scrum. So you're trying to make sure there's no angle. You're winning the space, so you're winning that space on the hit, and I'm trying to get in under my tie head, because it doesn't matter how big they are. If I can get right under your chin, you're basically rendered obsolete, and I'm going to try and pop you. So for like Jeremy, that's his job against kind of Tyke Furlong, which is not an easy job considering he's a world-class tie head. He obviously went off injured with an angle, but even Alatoa, it's your centre. So to go now in your tie head, you're going up against, now you're trying to get in the angle between two players. So you're trying to get in, you're going up against their hooker and their loose head, and you're trying to again win this space, cut the space down, and kind of get yourself in an angle and aiming for the second row's head. So technically it's so different. You're trying to pronounce your tie head, so I'm going up against, and all your power is going through them. So once the tie head is moving, then your scrum can move.
Okay.
So on one side you're being patient as a loose, you might have to be passive on the hit. Because if I'm, say, strong on a loose head side and I get a good hit, the opposition scrum will wheel, and that's giving them an upper hand against your tie head.
Okay.
So they're centred to everything that works. Like, if you don't win a space or you're in a bad position, you're kind of goose. And he did get in bad position against Porter a couple of times, but like Dave Kilcoyne did really well as well when against Alatoa, who was kind of, surprisingly, he was very extended as a tie head. Like, so when you hit, you need to chase your feet, like you're in this bear crawl position all the time. But Alatoa kind of collapsed the scrum, got penalised. I think the only thing for Lockman when he went to tight, very aggressive on the hit. And what happened was, when you hit and you don't sink, and kind of everyone like brings together your joints, so you're kind of like a transformer. So when you hit, you really recoil. Everyone tucks in, you're really strong. They kind of actually bounce back, and the put in is when you're weakest. So on Munster ball, when Murray put it in, you're losing your hooker for a strike. So you're down to 7 players scrummaging, and Leinster were just cute. And as soon as the put in and the hooker lifted, they just absolutely goosed him.
Annihilated him.
But positionally, he was just a bit like, he wasn't low enough. I felt his feet, he was a bit kind of open. Like, you don't want your open area as a tie head. So I think overall, to be honest, he did very, very well to come across. Yeah,
so obviously the last 20 minutes, it was just kind of, that was a big winning point for Leinster to just have that set piece. That's
Porter just kind of got in under, like that chest position I said. Like, you see Jeremy like when he opened himself up, so it just gave him more of a surface area to work with for Porter, and he just kind of left himself open. As a tie head, you want to really close that bind and give them very little surface area to work with. So I think he just used his experience, to be honest. And I'm sure Porter, going from loose to tight and back to loose, would know exactly all the kind of harsh learnings that he would have gotten that transition, you know. So I think hats off to him. I think they did really well. I think they frustrated the scrum, and they got a couple of easy penalties off Leinster.
Fair play to Jeremy Dublin up there. He was our winner of our Never Stop Competing last week as well. So we like Jeremy on the show. But I want to talk about the backs now. That was enough for chat there for a while.
I know, I did lose you, didn't I? You were like, oh, God.
Yeah. So Frawley at full back, what did you make of that?
Yeah, I was surprised. It shows how talented he is, that he can sort of play anywhere in the back line. I'm a big fan of him. Just a pity he couldn't play on that emerging tour. I think you would have obviously seen him at 10.
So yeah, seen him like running the squad there.
Yeah, so it'll be really interesting. It's just so difficult. I mean, you've got Johnny, the Byrne brothers, and then Kieran Frawley. You know, where is he going to get the time? You know, to play out half, because Ireland, you know, that's where they're heading towards. You know, having a real serious look at him there. I have a lot of time for him as a player. I think he's really gifted, and I think he's at the stage in his career. Potentially, he just needs to find his position and go for it.
I spent a bit of time with Rob Kearney a few weeks ago, and we were chatting about this whole thing about who's going to be the next 10 after Johnny. It was obviously a common chat to have with rugby heads, and he himself said he thinks it's going to be Kieran Frawley because he can't see a fault in Kieran Frawley's game. He said he can pass, he can kick, he's good knowledge of the game, he's aggressive, he's fast, and he just, as you just alluded to there, there's just no opportunities for him to play at 10 because Johnny's there all the time. So do you think Kieran Frawley will be the up and coming 10 after Johnny, or do you think there's other guys in the shout ahead of him?
I think he's probably best positioned. I mean, fortunate enough to have very good, you know, Ireland are very fortunate to have so many good options, alternatives to Johnny. I mean, if Johnny could keep going, I think that's the ideal solution, you know, for any Irish coach. But I think he's in the best position. You know, Ross Byrne is so well thought after in Leinster. You know, it's just finding games for him. It's just going to be the real challenge, because, you know, Ross has, you know, played so many games for Leinster. I know he came on at 12 at the weekend there. So as a rugby player, as a general rugby player, he would be my go-to, just because, as you alluded to, it is very hard to find a weak point in his game, but he just needs exposure at 10. And those high-end games, which obviously Joey has had with Munster, maybe not on a consistent basis at international level. It's just trying to get those high-end games at 10. Whether he'll find that with the club he's with at the moment, I don't know. That's up for the coaches to debate, but certainly as a rugby player, I really am very fond of him in that sense.
Sticking his hand up. Another person that stuck his hand up on the other side of the pitch was we had Crowley playing at 15 for Munster. How do you think he got on?
Yeah, I thought he was good. Leinster targeted him really well in the high ball. You know, Johnny put up lots of kicks to him and put him under pressure in that sense. He's really gifted. You know, I think down in Munster you've got Joey, who's got a mixture of both games. Ben Healy's kicking game is very good, whereas Jack's obviously, you know, he's fantastic with ball in hand. So it's, you know, Munster have a dilemma there of sort of figuring out how they want to play. Do you change each week, or, you know, based on who's there or whatnot? But he's certainly a talent. But I think Kieran Frawley at the minute would have a bit of a head start on him.
You think Jack Crowley's name is in the mix though for these up and coming 10s after Johnny, after the Emerging Ireland tour? He had a great Emerging Ireland tour. Yeah, definitely. I mean, he is getting games. But I suppose it's very much open, you know. Once Johnny stops, it's about the person who puts their hand up, really, and it's there to be taken. It is really,
you know, it really, and that's, I suppose, for people who are watching the game, you know, who are studying or whatever, that's the really interesting thing about who will take it. There are options, but it's just about guys getting consistent games at the highest level, just to make sure that transition is sort of seamless almost.
And what do you think the thought process is behind playing these out and out 10s really at 15? Like Frawley played 15, Crowley played 15. Do you think it's just an injury issue that the coaches are picking them there, or they're like, we might need to play him at 15?
Yeah, maybe for that game that could have been what was thinking from a Munster point of view. I know Joey then obviously has played a few games at 15. They might have looked to have switched it around potentially.
Is it kind of the idea to have two playmakers running the...
Yeah, and you sort of saw that you know, when Munster tried to play a little bit more in the second half, you saw Jack coming into it a little bit more. When Ben Healy came on, they sort of challenged a little bit more. Me personally, I love having two playmakers.
Takes the pressure off you.
Yeah, I always loved having it, just because it gives you an extra kicking option. It gives you an extra playing option. It just sort of keeps opposition guessing. So whether Munster stick with that, you know, it isn't a bad thing trying to learn about another position, because you do. I mean, I played as well centre in 15, so you do understand, but ultimately you want to nail your position, you know. So that's a really big thing when they're coming into their up into their mid-20s now. You really need to be starting to think, I'm going for that position, and that's where I want to play.
Well, the funny thing is, at the end of last season, we'd always be chatting about Ben Healy and how good his kicking is, and he was probably taking the jersey off Joey and putting Joey back to 15. And now Crowley's thrown his name in the mix. So there's just so many 10s. How do you think Ben Healy's getting on? I presume he's been injured and that he's just coming back in. I'm not sure. But he played in the weekend for a couple of minutes. He did okay.
Again, he's a different style of player. You know, his kicking game, as you said, is fantastic. And it is a bit of a dilemma for Munster in the sense of how do you approach the games with the personnel you have. I think Jack has probably taken a leap over Ben at the moment.
Based off the Emerging Ireland tour.
Yeah, but again, you know, you don't write off Joey Carberry by any stretch of the imagination. You know,
of course,
played against him in his early days with Ireland, and you can see he's so talented. You know, and I think I heard on, you know, other podcasts saying, you know, he might be the victim of so many voices, you know, you know, in terms of being coached. You know, he just needs to find his way, and you know, I'm not saying he plays on an individual basis, but what are his strengths? And his strengths are, you know, spotting gaps, and you know, he's got a good turn of pace on him. His passing is good. His kicking is good. His feet are unbelievable, and that's a great asset for Munster to have. And I do believe his game understanding and everything is growing, and that's because he's getting a bit more game time, you know, with Munster at 10. But again, there's one thing playing, you know, Munster URC, there's another thing then playing European Cups, and then there's another thing playing international rugby, and that's where it has to, it's difficult for him if he's only getting little 10-minute cameos. That is very, very difficult, because you're not the game is already described for you. You know, you're playing to what the situation is, but that's also part of it. But you know, whoever, I think that's why it is a pity that Kieran didn't get the games maybe in the emerging tour, because that would have been a big sort of test for him to see if he could pass in terms of running a team.
Of course, yeah. And you mentioned Joey there. About getting game time, but now he's after picking up a bit of a knock. So we're hoping that's not too much, because poor Joey's had his fair share of injuries. Like, he just needs to keep playing now. He hurt the shoulder. We're fingers crossed it's not too bad. Jean Klein also got injured. Thomas Ahern got injured. Jack O'Sullivan got injured. So we're hoping that all of them aren't too bad. But like, because Munster do not need more injuries. That would make it over 20 injuries in the squad. So fingers crossed the physios aren't too busy down in Munster at the moment. But up next, Munster have Ulster at home. What do you think is going to happen there?
Well, what was it, 30 plus people sick in the Ulster camp down in South Africa. So there was a bout of illness that's gone around two teams that were down there. So you just don't know sort of what Ulster are going to come back with. Obviously, there's some guys that wouldn't have travelled, but you know, so it's a big opportunity for Munster to lay down a marker, because I think people would argue, you know, Ulster have overtaken Munster as the second strongest province. So that's a real big marker for Munster to lay down. And I think, was it last year, the last time they played them in Ravenhill or up in the Kingspan, you know, Ulster won convincingly. So Ulster play a really good brand of rugby. They seem to have brought a bit more steeliness to their pack. But this is a real opportunity for Munster to lay down a marker, but also those, I know the squad has been picked, but those younger guys to lay down a marker against their Ulster younger counterparts to say, listen, you're not number two in the pecking order or whatever in terms of the province. You know, we're here to make a statement. So I think it's a massive game for Munster.
It is a good opportunity, because the Ulster lads are coming back from South Africa with a bout of illness. I think they got some gastro illness there. They were all spending a lot of time in the toilet, supposedly. So they might be a bit drained with all the travelling coming back from South Africa, then down to play Munster in Thomond Park. So it could be opportunity to get a few points. What do you think, Lindsay?
Yeah, to be honest, if it is, I think it's the biggest game now for Munster, considering they lost to Connacht. Obviously, put in a good performance against Leinster, but I think you're right. I think unfortunately Munster are the middle child now with no attention, and I think like Ulster are like this younger brother who's come up out of nowhere and kind of, you know, are starting to match. They're probably the biggest threat now to the big brother of Leinster and their success. So I think if Ulster, I liked Ulster last year. I thought they played a fantastic brand of rugby. I think, you know, Hume and McCluskey we've seen now in the autumn internationals, and we really hope he gets a run because he's absolutely an absolute beast of a man who's been like it's like a tennis ball. Like he's just, you know, he's just been phenomenal in Central. So I do think my money would be on Ulster, but, you know, I think if Munster is seeking opportunity, no better time now to catch Ulster on the off, and I think it'd be a big confidence booster for them. But
hopefully we get some of those lads out from injury and get to play against Ulster on the weekend. But time will tell. But another province that was in action over the weekend was Connacht. They got a good win in Sports Ground. They were 36-14 winners against Scarlets. But before we get on to that, we had Joe's very own Alex Roberts caught up with Andrew Conway to get the inside scoop on some of his Munster teammates. Have a look at this.
Got a couple of funny quick fire questions for you. Which teammate has the weirdest or strangest diet?
Definitely 100% David Kilcoyne. And he goes through different diets at the moment. He is, I hope I'm not giving any state secrets away, but he eats 4 steaks a night. Now, like not good standard steaks now, like the worst meat you can possibly buy, but he believes that this is now like his point of difference. He's big into turkey burgers with cheese. He's just like, he doesn't think like the normal human being does David, but he's you wouldn't change him at all. He's one of a billion, I'd say.
Is that inspired by Liver King or something like that?
He loves the Liver King. Yeah. He's sending me videos. The Liver King. Yeah.
When you said 4 steaks, and
is that what he is? Yeah. Okay.
Well, he's eating like hearts and liver and all that sort of stuff. But
yeah.
That would get some looks from the canteen if he pulled out that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and then like, but he eats normal throughout the day, you know, like, so he kind of claims that he only ever eats, you know, meat, but then also you see him having his lunch and he's having normal lunch, but then he'll just pretend that didn't happen, and you can't. He'll just lie and say that, like, no, I didn't, but yes, you did.
Is he fully carnivore on the diet then, or is he having like carbs and?
Well, I think he says he's all meat, but he's not. You know that type of way.
You can't be an athlete without carbohydrates, or can he?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Listen, I hope any nutritionists don't see this and I don't get him in trouble, but he's well out to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not calling out a pro rugby player on their diet. You know, so, who's the strongest in the gym, would you say?
He's up there. Fairness to him, he's very, very strong, and he tell you about it too. Tell you now, whenever he gets a good score, he does the rounds telling everyone, well, I got this, I spotted this. Who else is strong? The big lads are all strong, aren't they? Killer. Yeah, I'd say Killer's the strongest pound for pound.
Who's the biggest gym bunny? So not necessarily the strongest, but loves a selfie, loves a bicep pump in the middle.
Yeah, there's a load of them. You know, there's a load of them that you'd find on the bicep rack, which is disappointing, you know. Especially the older lads, like, they should be able to be fast at it now. Conor Murray's miserable biceps, like, he does have miserable biceps. So, fairness to him, he's been persistent and he's constantly working on them, but he's fighting a losing battle, unfortunately.
Any pre-match superstitions that you're able to reveal about from yourself or the squad?
Not really the squad, because, you know, everyone's got their own thing and you kind of leave people do their thing on particularly on match day. You don't want to, like, certainly don't judge what other people are up to. Different people have their own different ways. I remember Damien Diolande literally being asleep like 5 minutes before we were going out to a big match last year. Like, he did the jumper over his head and he was like just panned out in the seat, and I was like, oh my god, that lad is just sideways. And then he goes out and is the best player on the pitch, you know. Tyke Byrne plays Angry Birds or one of those games up until like a similar time frame, you know, and he's just so relaxed, and then again just turns it on to be one of the best players in the world. You can feel different people are up to different things. Some people are nice and chilled. We're trying to be more chilled, actually, to be honest with you. Get the music playing, have chatting. I love having Simon Zebo around the place because he's just fun, you know, he's just enjoyable company. So actually having him there and we sit near each other, you know, based on our positions, it's just nice to have him, you know. He takes the edge off me anyway, because I can get a bit angsty. What's
the funniest thing you've seen Simon Zebo do on a rugby pitch?
The funniest thing I've seen him do, what did he do? He's just generally funny, you know, like he's he just enjoys himself. It's a serious side to him too, you know, that you don't see it come out that often, but he is like, he'd be a good pal of mine, you know, and he's like just someone you gravitate towards. He's just got unlimited energy. He's got 4 kids, which is just like insane. You wouldn't know it though. You'd never see him tired. He's, you know, just very enjoyable to be around, and like brings the crack, and he takes his rugby seriously too. Like, you know, he gives off the perception that he doesn't, but he does, and he's got a lovely balance. So he's a top teammate. Who's
the GOAT of rugby in your opinion?
The GOAT of rugby is... There's a few people. Johnny Sexton, in my opinion, is up there. He's got however many European titles. He's got two Grand Slams, 3 or 4 other 3 championships maybe. However many URCs, Lions tours, now beaten New Zealand multiple times, over 100 caps. He's like, if you look at an impact that Johnny has on rugby matches when he's playing versus when he's not playing, it's crazy. It's really, really crazy. And the fella is 37, you know, so that plays his part. To be still going at this age massively plays his part into that type of question. He still wants more as well, you know, like I've known Johnny a long time, going back to when I was playing for Leinster, and he's mellowed out definitely in like a good way. You know, he's obviously the captain of the national team, and that's been brilliant for him, because it's almost in a way probably forced him to, you know, to chill out a small bit, which has been good for like everyone around him particularly, but then definitely for himself. You know, he's not as highly strung, but he's still, with that, why I say that he hasn't lost the drive or desire, which is like, you know, you almost think if he loses a bit of that, are you going to lose an edge? He hasn't. So hopefully Johnny, I know he's announced that he's retiring after the World Cup, I believe. So he's obviously got big 12, 15 months ahead. And, you know, if we can do what we, you know, are planning to do and are striving towards, then I don't think that question is in doubt. But at the moment, he's definitely up there.
One final one, Andrew. If you weren't a rugby player, what would you be?
Oh God, and I get asked this a bit, and I'm very grateful that I'm a rugby player, because I was no good in school, and I was a wild enough young man, so I would have, you know, definitely gone down a few wrong paths. Now I suppose as I'm in rugby, and the longer I'm in rugby, I really enjoy the psychological side of it. It's definitely served me a lot, and particularly in the last 5 or 6 years, to, you know, keep getting better, and, you know, keep going up the levels, and eventually break into the national team, and, you know, perform, you know, keep those performance levels climbing. So I enjoy talking about that. So I suppose when you're looking for after rugby life, what do I enjoy doing? You know, I enjoy talking. I enjoy sports. It's all I've known. I enjoy talking about the mindset part of it, which is psychological part of it. So I think the where I'd be at now is going into something to do with that. Now I don't know if that's as a sports psychologist or as a, you know, within sporting environments. Just, you know, I'm not sure the exact role, but that's what I enjoy talking about. So I think that's a relatively good place to start planning, you know. Have you had the chance to actually impart your advice from what you've learned to younger players, academy, pros, that stuff? Yeah, 100%. I think that's part of it. You know, Paul O'Connell was very good to me when I first came down to Munster, and as he was retiring as well, you know, I'd cheeky enough to tap him up for conversations, not really realising at the time, you know, the man probably had 2 kids at the time. He's getting people pulling him left and right. He's an Irish rugby legend, and I'm asking him, can you sit down for coffee a couple of times? And he gave me, you know, all the time in the world. You know, I remember going for a walk with him once, sitting having a coffee once. There was 1 or 2 more times as well, and like, you know, he is a busy man, and he's getting, like I said, getting people pulling him left and right, and he was good enough to, you know, sit down with me and properly make effort, you know, and listen to me, listen to what I was saying, listen to where I was coming from, give him opinion. Remember, we sent this big email back and forth of, like, you know, essentially a bullet points of what the conversation was, you know, time consuming stuff. So it's definitely the more experienced player's job, if asked. You know, you don't want to go around, like, you know, imparting wisdom here, and like people tell you go away, like, you know, you don't want to be that guy. But if someone asks you, you know, you got to make the effort to help as much as you can. So I'm still learning 100%, you know, still learning from some of the young lads that come in. You know, someone like Craig Casey is is amazing in what the attitude he's brought and the want and the standards he sets. So like there's learnings to be made everywhere. It's not just from the experienced guys, but I suppose when you're that bit more experienced and you've been around the block a couple of times with, you know, potentially when I was coming in I was going to be the next big thing, that then looked like I was going to be the next big failure, and then you kind of, you know, you claw your way back in a way. There's a lot of life experience in that, so yeah, I'd like more than happy to share with, you know, people that ask, but again, you don't want to be the guy going around preaching either.
Brilliant, Andrew, thanks very much for your time, man.
All right, so our counterparts are over in the west of Ireland. Connacht got a good win, 36-14, well deserved. Did you watch the game, Lindsay?
I did. Connacht are good. Like, they have some great moments, you know, but they were probably lucky with Scarlets' 2 yellow cards, and I thought Carty's link up with our boy Mac for 2 of his tries was unbelievable. Skip pass in the corner, finished very well, and then the little kick through, he was probably lucky, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. So listen, great win. I think the all-weather surface now is starting to suit the Westerners and their style of play.
Definitely, yeah. Well, Mac Henson got caught early on in the game.
Oh, God, he did. He got left for dushed.
I was like, no, Mac. So he's a good friend of the show, kicked the ball, and just a good counter-attack, got caught in the hop. So I'd say he just was enraged after that. Yeah. Came out and had one of the games of his life. His 2 tries back-to-back. So shout out to Mac. Did you get to watch the game yourself?
Yeah, great. He's a great finisher, in fairness to him. Murray, the second row as well for Connacht. Like we're talking about
he's
Thomas.
He's doing well, isn't he?
He's a really good player.
Block down.
Yeah, he's a really good player. I look forward to seeing him going forward. So happy for Andy Friend. He seems a really good coach. They just haven't fired on all cylinders, and you'd be disappointed they left a few more points out there. But I think Connacht will be all right. They'll find their groove.
They're just still inconsistent, aren't they, really, lads? They just need to be consistent. Even during the 80 minutes, they can be inconsistent. They can do something amazing. But I think as well, we're talking about young lads and consistency. I think Cian Prendergast is starting to, like, he's even gotten bigger. I didn't think he had another great game. He's just centre to everything that Connacht do well. So, yeah, good win for them against Scarlets.
Good win, deserved win. Hopefully they keep going with that now. And another little talking point in that game was Paul Boyle's yellow card. He flipped your man onto his neck. The refs came out and said it wasn't actually that dangerous, but it just doesn't look good, does it, guys?
No, because he brought him down. He would have felt the momentum. You do feel the momentum coming, and he obviously pulled him forward out of the ruck, and there was clear outs by other Connacht players that lifted for the clear out, but I just thought, I thought it was dodgy. I think he got away with a yellow, if I'm honest.
What would you make of it, Ian, that kind of flipping a guy out of a ruck onto his neck? It's just can't be in the game.
Can't do it. No, yeah. So I think Lindsay saying dodgy there. I think that's...
He got away with one, to be honest.
Yeah, they could have gone very dangerous. But so Paul Boyle slapping the wrist. Don't be doing that again, fella. So moving on, well done, Connacht. The Sharks Ulster game got postponed, as we said. And the other games, we had Zebra lost 38-19. Benetton lost 44-22. Sorry about that, Ian.
It's all right.
But they're actually playing well this year.
Yeah, they won all apart from obviously the Bulls game, they won all their home games. I was commentating on that one. Just the Bulls, just their forwards are just so powerful, and it was 22-20 with about 14 minutes to go, and I think Bulls then scored a try, which was never a try. Foot was in touch, but it was given, and just Bulls' power. They did deserve to win it, and yeah, Zebre after a good start, picking up 2 points in the first. Well, what was it? 4 points in the first 2 games. They just don't have a squad depth, which is just, I think, towards the latter part of the season, the middle to the latter part of the season will start to tell with them. So that's a disappointing loss at home.
Yeah, 38-19 against Edinburgh. Adam McBurney with 2 tries, actually. Good friend of mine, well done, Adam. Benetton doing okay, as we said. Dragons beat Ospreys 32-25 at Rodney Parade. We have a great performance by Reece Priestland, who scored 20 points in the game, set up 2 tries, beating the Stormers 30-24, which is a great win because Stormers are obviously reigning champions. And Cardiff had an unbelievable try from Theo Cabango. Did you see that one?
Yeah, the intercept try. Right?
This is the one where...
Oh, sorry, the crossfield kick by Priestland. It was unbelievable. And his speed out of nowhere, and then just his little springy finish. I was like, geez, it was great. Priestland was lively.
I thought, Priestland had a great game. Good to see him back playing well again. But I think he was going for 50-22. It looked like Ian, didn't he?
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously with the hard surface, the ball bounced up. But I couldn't believe that Theo Cabango got there. From where the ball was kicked, I was like, how? Surely he was offside. I rewinded to watch it.
Yeah.
That guy is fast.
You need to set up a race against him.
He'll destroy me, but I will. Yeah, anything for a bit of content.
Oh, listen.
Yeah. But shout out to Theo Cabango for always running after the balls for the wingers. Sometimes they come off. But our never stop competing moment of the week, together with Bank of Ireland, goes to Rio Dyer. His second try for Dragons. So it was an intercept try he scored against Ospreys, and they were actually down to 13 men at the time, and that won the game for them.
Yeah, like who does that? That would be a me moment actually. I'd be like, oh yeah, ball. And then they'd be like, no, you've left a dog leg. And I'd probably give away a try. But yeah, the fact that he had, I suppose if you're losing anyway and you just have that moment, it's make or break. It could have went very differently, but fair play to him. He had nerves of
high
steel.
reward, yeah. And his first try was unbelievable as well. He did the classic into out and left his winger in the back in his arse. So well done to Rio Dyer, getting the never stop competing moment of the week together with Bank of Ireland. Well done, fella. The Irish team was named, but we'll get onto that next week because I want to talk about the Women's World Cup very quickly with you.
Yes, we have finally our fixtures for the quarter-final. So France play Italy, but a big shout out to Italy. The first Italian team to ever make a World Cup quarter-final. So congratulations. Giada Franco has had 2 running player to match performances. It's great to see her back. She missed the Six Nations. She's obviously a Quins player, and she's just been phenomenal for Italy. So France will play Italy, New Zealand against Wales, England, Australia, and Canada will play USA. That one's a big one for me, Canada-USA, because Canada absolutely annihilated USA. Well, didn't annihilate them, but 29-14 in their last pool game. But now they meet again in the quarter-final. So yeah, that'll be a good one. But I think, to be honest, right now up until the semi-finals, probably like predictable. But as I said, I'd like to see Italy, who beat France just before they came to the World Cup.
Did they?
Yes, they did. Yeah. So I'd like to see that one as well. I think hopefully there'll be an upset, and I'm hoping for the Italians. Go on, the Azzurri.
Do you have any insight into that?
No, I think out of all the games that are listed there, that's probably the one that you could go. You might say there might be a bit of an upset, even though France have done. They've
done well, but they weren't clinical against Fiji, to be fair.
Yeah.
Even though the score would not allow it, I think they won 4-4-0, but they were tough L tries. They've had a lot of injuries. They lost Sansus, who was player of the tournament last year with Six Nations. She's gone with an ACL injury. So they kind of did rotate their squad, but the French are typically French. They can be like fabulous, or they can be kind of moody nearly. So I'd like to see the Italians for that upset. So
Italian
best of luck.
in a good place, obviously, Ian, is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, the women have generally been outperforming the male counterparts, and they've sort of flying the flag for Italian rugby, which is great to see. So it is a great reward that they've got into the knockout stages, and they've played some good stuff. Watched the first game. Was it against America? I think. Was it against America? I can't. Anyway,
Yes, they did play America, and they beat America.
Yeah, and some of the tries that they got were outstanding, as you mentioned. Giada Franco, she's a brilliant player, and she's been there for years, and she's well known in Italy in the rugby circles, and she's almost like the Sergio Parise of female rugby. So she's even just for her, everything that she's done, it's a great achievement. So hopefully they put in a good performance.
Yeah, fingers crossed for Italy. But it's probably as predicted, and we'll see probably England and New Zealand just kind of go through.
Yeah, like England, technically they struggled in the first half, and they still beat South Africa 75-0. But like a shout out to South Africa, it's like Lynn Cantwell is an ex-Irish player, headed their high performance, and they've had 12 months of just really developing South African rugby. So it's nice to see the likes of South Africa and Fiji there. Fiji got their first win of a World Cup. So, there's, like we said last week, there's so many positive signs, but I think it's predictable now, and I can't really, and it kills me. I'm sorry, but it kills me. Probably England are probably favourites, and rightly so, to come with it. But there's still an upset in these next rounds, and I'd like to see where it's going to be.
We'll see how it plays out. My inkling is saying New Zealand are going to do well, just because they're at home and they're playing well. So
I think you're right, because I think just because of the power and pressure maybe on England, and there's been no talk really of New Zealand. They've been just simmering along nicely. They've had 2 big wins against Scotland and Wales, but watch this space.
We'll see how it plays out. Yeah, very interesting, the Women's World Cup. But that's all we have time for today, unfortunately. Mr. Ian McKinley, thank you so much for coming in, especially to promote this book, Second Sight, Rugby and Redemption. I can't wait to read this.
Appreciate it.
On our 3rd day, he's going to read me a chapter.
Definitely.
Don't let my wife hear that.
No.
Definitely, guys, go out and get this book, because it's more than just rugby. So it's going to be a good one, especially coming up to Christmas. Lindsay, thank you so much as always.
Thank you. A pleasure as always, my
friend.
friend.
100%. And also thank you, of course, to our partners, Bank of Ireland, proud supporters of the 4 Irish provinces. We'll catch you next week, guys. Thanks very much. very much.